biggest bunch of misfits I ever set eyes on.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit podcast. On today's episode, we will be talking about one of my favorite things in the entire world, and that is linear progression, a little concept called the ramp that I often use at the beginning of conversations with remote clients, or just sort of as a way to begin like a programming mentorship, that sort of thing. Before we get into that, a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of live chat. If you've been listening to the podcast recently, you already know this, but if you are a new listener, we've got some new programming offerings. The Pro program is for semifinals, CrossFit Games athletes. We could add Pro and Challenger World Fitness Project athletes to that list. I created this very specifically because this program is essentially for professionals. It's split up into 2 sessions per day. And I believe that if you're going to follow a program of that magnitude and you don't have a remote coach, that you should have access to a coach. There's a private Telegram group for all the people that sign up for that program, do things like video review, talk about workout strategy, all that kind of stuff. So it's sort of bridging the gap between having a full-time coach and following the program all on your own. By popular demand, the program sort of being bundled back together, is back. And if you go to Strivey or Fitter and you subscribe to the comp subscription, you get access to Masters, Hatchet, which is for our open and semifinals hopefuls, and the GPP program, which is just for your everyday athlete. Gotten some good feedback already. Just certain people kind of go through different periods of time. A lot of questions happen relating to the Hatchet and the Masters, whether you should be on Hatchet or Masters. So being able to take a look at that when you come to us and ask your questions can be really helpful. And then there's just times a year where, a simple, 10 to 20 minute ass kicking each day is all you're really looking for. And you're going to find that daily, on the GPP program. You can also head to, and all of that will be link in bio, on social media, easiest place to find it. You can also head to teammisfit.com, click on the sign up now button, and get a Misfit affiliate 2-week free trial on StreamFit, Push Press, or SugarWOD. And last but not least, we have new logo tees and hoodies at sharpentheaxeco.com. A couple of the colors are limited release, limited edition, so make sure you get your butts over there and get the last few. All right. Hunter, live chat. What's going on?
What's up? I'll save my. I was actually going to talk about the. I've been doing recently the once a week 10-8-6-4-2 like power movements. So power clean with like a 500 meter row in between sets as rest, dude. Where like the instruction is like flirt with fatigue without not failure. Yeah. That was actually going to be part of my, I'll bury the lead a little bit, include that in my linear progression conversation.
There's a lot of bang for your buck in there. We'll get into that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a time efficiency thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it. It gets it done in it's very GPP-esque for me, and on a day where I have a little bit tighter of a time window, that's been good. But I'll save that a little bit for the linear progression conversation that I didn't know we were having until 15 minutes ago, but it works nicely.
It's like the old unprepared podcast.
That's perfect.
Where you guys were the only ones that were unprepared. I knew it every time.
Yeah. Everybody else just there. Yeah, not let's see, life chat. I did, the handicap's going in the wrong direction currently.
Oh, no.
Currently on the upswing. Yeah, it's
we talked about this, though. Sometimes steps forward require steps back.
Yeah. Working on some swing stuff, going to get a lesson for some professional instruction. I have once again fallen prey to the idea that somebody really much better than me at golf. So I'm playing with a friend of mine who I actually went to high school with. He's a plus handicap, meaning he like on average shoots par or better, might shoot par or better on a course. Very good golfer.
Yeah.
Gave me some in the moment like thoughts because I was like struggling with contact, like good quality contact one day, and he kind of made some observations, and they're observations that I knew existed, but I've been able to, like, I guess, compensate, work around them a little bit. Trying not to, but like it doesn't take long for you to deviate. Thinking in CrossFit, like you have a good session, everything lines up, maybe your coach is watching, or you get a review and you're like, yes, this is it, and you feel like things have clicked, and then the next time it's a little bit off, and the following time it's a little bit off of that, and then maybe you start to like go down the self-correction rabbit hole, or worse, the YouTube rabbit hole of corrections designed for massive clicks and not your personal improvement. So
what?
We need to I need to get back just in front of a professional with one set of eyes to watch my specific issues and give me some corrections, and not get caught in the like, well, my friend who's better than me at this thing told me to do that, so I'm going to start doing that, and then I'll play golf like him. And it's like,
you're also uniquely qualified to audit the ability of a coach.
Well,
because
that's
someone being good at something does not mean they can help you.
Yeah, exactly. And to like, he certainly didn't at any point claim to be that, but
sure,
yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Like
there's a lot of like, why don't you just do this when someone's kind of natural at something, and you're like,
right,
fuck off, bro.
Yeah,
hit it straight and far, and then be accurate.
Yeah, and it's not even like he struggled. Like he was saying, like, yeah, I struggled with that too, and it took me a while to correct it. I just have to be like, okay, well, I'm hearing advice from somebody who's played the game for 20 years as a player, not a coach, and has therefore, 10 times as many years of experience and tinkering that I do. So, I think that in my golf journey so far, having that, like, the coach experience on my side has helped. But with that said, it's like, I still fall into the same trap that I would tell an athlete to not fall into, right? If one of my athletes came to me and said, like, well, I watched this video on YouTube, they're saying to do this, and I'm like, motherfucker, I'm going to kill you. It's like, it would be the same concept.
Of course,
and I know better, but I still can't help myself sometimes. But
I think the reason you can't help yourself is because there's like oftentimes there's this like level of enthusiasm with no outlet for it. So you want to get better at it, but to truly coach something and understand it, you have to be able to break it down into its component parts and have like a keen eye for something. So like if I ever went back and tried to coach football or baseball, like knowing what I know now, I would have to relearn everything based on that fact. Not just, hey, like there's so many bad coaches out there that were good at whatever respective thing that they're coaching.
Sure.
And like you see it a lot in like youth sports. It's like, why doesn't this, this dad played, independent league baseball or like D1 soccer or whatever the thing is. And it's like, well, yeah, he's 6'3", 215, has got a fucking howitzer. Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, like, do you really break things down again into their component parts, and can you spot the flaw, and can you show, not at full fucking speed against a pitch or whatever it is, out on literally like in the middle of a round, like, can you show them that and give them the option to iterate over like a series of practice?
Yeah,
like,
I had
coaching
my high
and
school
doing
hockey
are just
coach.
so different.
My high school hockey coach was that, and me and the golfer Neil that I've been playing with, we like reminisce a little bit about high school hockey days, and I was like, someone, I don't remember who. Oh no, it was a different friend. He asked me what coach or being coached by my high school hockey coach was like, and I was like, in hindsight, my high school hockey coach he played in the NHL. He was actually that guy. He was like 6'6", 245, like big man moving. You could tell he played in the NHL. But I was like, in hindsight, he wasn't a hockey coach. He was a former NHL player, and for public high school sports, it's like, maybe that's a sufficient qualification, but that doesn't mean you're a good coach. And then in the same way, like how many CrossFit Games athletes would you necessarily want to be your coach because they achieved a high level of competition. So going back in the lab with a with a pro, hopefully come back out the handicap going back in the right direction. But
that's a
maybe
good
not.
segue in there. We got to do like just a little bit of hockey talk, and I'll tell you why we have to do it.
I mean, you don't have to tell me why, just do it.
Greatness is so fascinating to me, and it's time. I am going to watch and read everything that I can find on Connor McDavid. I need to know. I have to know. And the Canadians and the fucking, little Wayne Gretzky's puck handling when he's 3 years old, Dad, I'm coming in a few hours. Like, you know what I mean? Like I love that culture. That's such a huge part of it. Right? Like if you're not pretty good when you're 4 in Canada, they're like, that's enough, like that kind of thing. So there's got to be part of it there.
For you.
But there's different elements to these things that really fascinate me. And I've watched a good amount of hockey, but not like a ton. I grew up watching college hockey, got into the NHL in like the late 90s, which is funny because our listeners would be like, I wasn't alive yet. Got into the NHL in the late 90s. Honestly, a lot because
if you didn't watch hockey in the
NHL
90s,
97.
you missed out.
NHL 97 is a great game. So I understand it. I know it. I've seen a lot of it, and the one thing you can say, it could be like I could be going too deep into the sports here for people, but like a Brady versus Rogers. Like Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player to ever live, and maybe McDavid will surpass that. But he's the best, the most skilled. Like, oh my God, the shit that guy does is so
There's certainly no other
unbelievable.
player at their peak at any time in the NHL who could compare to Connor McDavid right now, for sure.
No, it's so fascinating to watch. And, you don't even need to watch. I'll suggest playoff hockey to anyone. You don't even need to know what's going on. That shit is wild, especially if you ever get to see it in person. In person, it's just like the entire arena has like a heartbeat. It's just a totally different experience than any other sport. Like everyone's on the edge of their seat the whole time. Like you feel like you're going to throw up if you're up a goal.
The speed, speed is just
the anxiety.
Insane. It's one of the
nuts.
few sports too that like when you're watching, you can like, I don't know. I think maybe for a layman, not so much, but like you can see and feel the speed and intensity of the game. I think more so than you can in basically any other sport.
Oh, 100% agree, because
like,
it's artful. It's these like massive human beings, or at least a lot of them. I'm going to just about soon here going to be talking about a tiny human being. That's awesome. But like it's not just fast. It's like finesse, it's power, it's all of these things happening at
there's
once.
a fluidity to it. And part of it's just the nature of the sport. Like the stop and
jump
start
out
of
there
football,
and go
Super
real
Bowl,
fucking hard for 30
too,
or 40
like,
seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is like so many of these stop-start sports are like the other side of the spectrum is soccer, where like I remember the last World Cup, I was like communicating with Gabe a little bit, and he was just like, gotta watch Mbappe. Like, you have to see this guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to know what's going on. Like, I don't understand it at all. And I watched one game, and I was like, that's the fittest man alive. Oh my God, he can sprint for an hour. Like, what the fuck? But then you go to baseball or football and you play for like 1 second. And I think there's something special about hockey being this continuous game, but they're not out there for very long, but it's like long enough to really see it. Like a football play is just done. And a lot of people that watch it are like, I don't even know what just happened.
Yeah. I was going to honestly make like World Cup soccer a close second in that regard, just because, again, I think it just has more to do with the sport and how it's like continuous, so you can see like the ebbs and flows of the speed of the game without it coming to a screeching halt like in basketball or football. But
I just
Yeah,
invented a
playoff.
new sport. They should do shifts in soccer. That'd be so dope. People sprinting all over the
sick.
field. That'd be
would
awesome.
be
Because that's like
fucking
one of
crazy.
the knocks. Like the field is
I
so
mean,
gigantic.
that's lacrosse, I think. That's basically
Yeah.
lacrosse.
Yeah, sort of.
But I don't know how
so-
much stuff you're gonna find on McDavid.
I'll find it.
I mean, I know. Okay, fair enough.
I'll find
but
it. I'll go. YouTube. You know how those dudes make those documentaries on YouTube? You don't even know if they're real. Just some guy
yeah,
makes
they're
a
not.
documentary.
They're actually
I
just
watch those
clips
all the
and like
time.
an AI voiceover.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
perfect.
but some of them are decent because they like actually take the time to dig. So at the very least, go watch the game highlights. They're unreal. And then I hate the Florida Panthers, but I got this weird feeling going on right now because after Four Nations, he's like USA cheering for Kachuk. Really kind of, I don't know, man. It made me feel weird inside. Like I didn't know anything about myself. And then now my boy Brad Marchand is on the Panthers, which is weird. It's like a Red Sox player going to play for the Yankees kind of a thing. Not quite as drastic, but he's so fucking good. And he fits in so well there. Like I was listening to an interview of a retired NHL player who said during the lockout they would skate together, and you can understand his genius when you are training one-on-one with another guy. It's like if there is a puck that you're both skating to and you don't beat him by like a mile, he's going to get it from you. Because normally he just beats you to it. And if he doesn't, the way he can position his body and just, poke your stick up or hit you, to get the butt of the stick, like it's like it makes no sense that he's able to do what he does.
Yeah,
like
he's
basically
such a good
talking about how he's
skater.
like a magician.
So good on his edges. Like
He's wily too. Like in a, he's a lot of people don't like him. He's one of those guys, if he's not on your team, you fucking hate him because he's, blowing kisses at you or licking your face or God knows what he's doing.
They did lose. I was right. They played last night. Panthers won 6-1. So it's 2-1 Florida.
What?
Yeah, Thursday.
My app
Thursday
didn't
they're
refresh.
back in Edmonton.
I logged in to ESPN this morning, which I do every morning because we're on the East Coast and I can't watch sports. Like I'm not staying up until midnight. And it said tied 1-1, play tonight. So it just didn't update my ESPN.
Yeah.
app. Damn it. 6-1. Holy shit.
6-1.
Yikes.
Marchand, first period goal, 56 seconds in. Big
course
ouchie,
he did.
boys.
Yeah. He had 2 goals the game before, I think.
I know who else is super impressive in this series is Corey Perry, who's 40 years old and still contributing for an NHL. For
Wild.
Stanley
So
Cup
Bob
final.
actually played well. We're going to lose all of our listeners 17 minutes in. Bob stood on his
shots on
fucking
33 to 31 shots on goal. 85
He only does like
penalty
one of
minutes?
those in a series, though. He won't do that again. I mean,
What?
if Bob can steal a game, then that's usually good. But I don't think that's going to happen again. I think the rest of them will be close. It's not that easy to shut down fucking McDavid and Draisaitl. Crazy that those two are on the same team. Although they've talked about how like the third line of the Panthers would be the first line on any other team other than the Oilers. So it's like, I guess depth. It's kind of like depth versus.
That's probably
juggernaut.
got to be the biggest difference between the two teams. Just how deep that Florida bench is.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about linear progression. I'll start with my origin story. I've told this story before on the podcast. I think by rule I can tell it every 100 episodes, roughly. So we're back around to the same story. In 2003, I want to say 2003, 2004. I went to a combine for high school to college football players, and they did max bench press at 165 pounds. And I got 1 rep at 165 as a senior in high school. Now, in my defense, this was gluten Drew. I was a very, very skinny young man, unaware of the fact that everything that I ate came flying out of my body because I was allergic to it. So it's helpful to find that out later on down the line. And my coach, who was in charge of getting me stronger, was also kind of a douchebag. Made
Another
fun
profession
of me for it.
where being a big guy with a chest does not qualify you to be the strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah. Now, he was the head coach, but he was also thought he was the strength and conditioning coach. He wasn't good at either. And he made fun of me for this. And, like, I don't know. If my ego now is the size of this room that I'm in, it's like the size of a bedroom. At that point in my life, my ego was probably the size of, I don't know, New England, somewhere in that range. So like stuff like that worked for me. Like him saying basically that I was weak and making fun of me, even though it was his job to get me stronger, was like, all right,
Yeah.
bitch, like, let's go. So I started going to the gym by myself and found a 3x10 linear progression bench press program in a lifting magazine that I bought, like straight up, like at a stand in the mall. Was like, all right, let's go, let's get into this. And I basically started doing 3x10, adding 5 pounds. So if I had to guess, I was, whatever, 10 reps at 95 pounds, 10 reps at 100 pounds, 10 reps at 105 pounds, and then each week, each set went up 5 pounds. And I rode that to, I did 165 for 10 during that progression. And he decided that he's like one of those guys that has like one joke, and he was a teacher in the school. So he made fun of me again in front of some of the other football players. This is after the football season. And I was like, how much do you think I bench now? He's like, what? He like expected me to just not say anything. I was like, how much do you think that I bench press now? Like, I've been training. And he's like, where? And I was like, just at the like local gym. I think it's called Misfit. That's the name of the gym. And
Spelt.
he goes, oh, I don't know. Did you hit 170? And I said, nah, I hit 215. And he was just like had absolutely nothing to say. And I probably weighed 150, like somewhere in that range. And then back then, dude, 220. If you bench 225, you were the strongest man alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, is this like a 17
In high school, you're a
kid.
goddamn war hero.
Right, exactly. And that honestly is the origin story of, I don't think if that happened, I'd be on this fucking podcast right now. Like that got me down the rabbit hole of, and we've talked about this before on the mental side of like once you know that if you want something, there is something that you can do about it. Like that shouldn't be an epiphany, but is very much an epiphany in like a young person's life, where you kind of just assume that like the world happens to you and everything is like circumstance and shit like that.
Yeah.
And it was just like, if I try hard and do the same thing over and over, I can get better at it. Like I can just choose to do that. And then it was fucking like I read Arnold's book, and my brother and I would do Arnold's full routine and take us 2.5 hours at the gym, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
But like just knowing that you can start somewhere, and like of course beginner gains are very much a thing, but every year, like we're doing it right now, we're doing Texas Method, and people are going to realize that like if you have the right brand of linear progression, it's going to continue to work over and over and over. We'll get into a lot of the tactics here, but I always like to start something like this with a little bit of an origin story. I'm not sure if you can think of one, Hunter.
Yeah,
where you
I
might
was just
have
trying
used
to
it prior
think back.
to.
I think my first like true exposure to like traditional linear progression was reading Starting Strength, Mark Ripetoe's book. I watched, that was a time too when I was getting into CrossFit, when he was a little bit more like, he was one of the kind of the original maybe subject matter experts on powerlifting, or just somebody that was deferred to for his knowledge, and just the, I still have the Starting Strength book, and just the 5x5, add 5 pounds a week, like really just kind of like cemented the idea that just like by adding, you can just like see progress by adding a little bit each week. And I think even prior to that, my like very first exposure to like just training in general, I did like, I got into it from like Men's Health magazine. It was like, I'll just do the workouts that are in the book. And then that progressed to like, well, I didn't make varsity hockey as a sophomore, which kind of sucks, especially if you want to play in the NHL, which was obviously a fucking pipe dream. But you know, it doesn't bode all that well for your future in hockey. And then so I trained my ass off over the summer, and it was like, that was when NikeBauer.com had like programs, and Brad Marchand of all people was playing like junior hockey for Canada, and his face was like, but the point is that it was like a handful of workouts that they basically just like rotated through, and I was a kid, I didn't realize that it was just probably some intern just copying and pasting on NikeBauer.com. But the point is like every time I went out, it was like, okay, I'm gonna just try to go faster than last time. It's like that was it's just the principle of like, well, I've done this before, can I do it better this time? I didn't know that there was a name for that, and I don't know that they would even call it linear progression, but just the concept that like if you're going to train and repeat something, like the idea that you would just do the same thing over and over again, like you see so many kind of traditional, just everyday gym goers in the gym. It's like, I always do my 3x10 at 135. I use 40-pound dumbbells for my bench press, whatever it is. And it's like how could you expect to, in my head, it just made sense that like, why would you expect to get better if you're just going to do the same thing over and over? Right. And I went through a phase of doing that like everybody else, but then it was like, well, if I do more than this, then I can, by definition, I'm stronger. So like, I don't have quite the same like linear progression origin story, but that was kind of my first introduction to the idea of like, if you're going to do the same thing repeatedly, like you should have a goal of like, do it heavier, do it faster, or do it better, in order to kind of continue to make progress. So
yeah, and I will admit that I use the term linear progression in place of things like progressive overload or literally just progression, like that kind of thing. Because it's the same concept that I'm trying to bring to it, and I like using it because I think the idea of incremental growth is something that a competitive CrossFitter has to wrap their mind around. They have to get better at understanding what they're training and why they're training it, so that they can then try to make these smaller improvements to actually see what's going on. Because there is the like physical benefit, of course, but there's also a mental benefit. If it's staring me in the face that I'm getting better, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to show up tomorrow.
I think there's also like, for the CrossFitter, because of the number of things that you have to be proficient in, a linear progression makes a lot of sense. And I think at some point we can talk about like the difference between that and like an undulating periodization type program that might be more specific to like weightlifting. But even that, to a certain extent, we do that by rotating like lifts of, speed, volume,
right? You go
heavy
back
loading
down, but then the percentage goes up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you're you're doing waves, like waves in and of themselves have linear progression built into them, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Or there's there's a total poundage lifted component that's still like that has still has a progressive nature to it. But for a CrossFitter too, and especially because you're not training for a single thing like a weightlifter is training just to max a snatch and max a clean and jerk, you have to be proficient in a lot of different both movements and energy systems. The linear progression makes it, I think, a lot easier for a CrossFitter to just kind of track progress across the dozens of movements that you need to be proficient in, whether it's, EMOMs for chest to bar pull-ups or muscle-ups, where, you add 1 rep every week or add 1 rep to the first set and, that sort of thing, or using the gears matrix for the aerobic or cardio type machines where we're just trying to shave 1 second off every time we do something similar. It just makes a lot of sense for a CrossFitter who has to kind of track a lot of different components of fitness.
For sure. So just an overview here on linear progression, using progressions to get better at a lot of different things. We're choosing a variable to increase. And we'll talk a lot about within the different categories what variables you can choose to increase. But this is part of the secret that can really help a programmer, an athlete, a remote coach, that sort of thing, when you are locking in on which variable is either most likely to be able to increase or needs to increase more than others. A timeline, I think, is really important if we're talking about this within the competitive CrossFit space. Less so if you have a really long runway. You can kind of just ride it. But when it comes to competitive CrossFit, there's parts of the season. There's a lot of things to work on, and I think a timeline is really important. And then what the timeline does is gives you the runway that I want to talk a little bit about. So there's something that I use in my sort of first meeting with a remote client. Let's see, I'll pull it up. If you're watching on YouTube right now, I'm going to show you guys the ramp here. And the information that I have down at the bottom is very much related to, is actually, if you see, we have a ponytail on this bike rider here. I was showing this to a female athlete, and I like side quests that get me distracted from what I'm actually supposed to be doing. So I went and redid the person to be a woman.
What'd you do this in?
This was in Illustrator, but this was like a quick job. Yeah.
Very nice.
This is a quick job here. Yeah. My skill level is like, if I can use the curvature tool this well, I'm pretty excited with myself.
Nice.
Yeah. It's been a good day.
It's a steep cliff to fall off.
Yeah. But we're going slow at the beginning, remember?
Exactly,
So
yeah. You try to launch off that thing, that's where the splat comes in.
Again, I'm a 90s kid, so I'm thinking Danny Way going over the Great Wall of China or something. Like, that's what I'm going for here.
That's what I'm looking for. Microsoft Paint.
Exactly. So, again, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the stuff at the bottom. That is very much related to using the ramp when we're talking about machine paces. That can be a like mental pretzel for a lot of athletes. Like, they just come off the competitive season, they got to get back on the machines, and they're wondering why they're not PRing every single gears thing. So that's what that's related to. So again, if we define our timeline when it comes to something that we're trying to progress, that gives us the opportunity to create runway. So for the listeners, what the ramp looks like is we have someone on a bike, a gigantic ramp, or basically a steep hill down, a nice curve, then to a jump. So think like big air, jump, ski, snowboard, whatever, that sort of thing. And the concept here is that a lot of programs and programmers put their athlete at the bottom of the jump without the runway going into it. And what it says on there is how much momentum do we create if we start here, #splat. If I have to trudge my way up that hill, starting from 0 miles per hour, I'm just going to fall off the edge of it. And that's what happens to a lot of athletes. They get at the very beginning of a program and a progression, get their ass handed to them, and are asked to hold paces or lift weights or do certain things that don't give them momentum to run past their former self. Like, that's what we're trying to do here. So when you go into linear progression, if you have we're going to guess wrong in a lot of instances. Like, this happened to me earlier in the year when I grabbed 50s for 6x10 incline bench. I thought that because I liked strict press that I liked incline bench. Turns out I don't. Like, I just don't have the muscle endurance for that like pattern. And literally had to drop like 20 pounds, basically. I had to go down to 40s instead of 50s. So you will make mistakes, but if you are at the beginning of something where you're trying to progress and it's really hard and you have that timeline set, then you need to readjust. And I would suggest doing it like right in that moment. Like, if you do something that's incredibly hard and you're like, I'm supposed to add weight to this every week, unless you're a beginner, there's probably going to be an issue there. And again, just for the listener, what this says down at the bottom, we sort of have this broken up into 4 parts. As we're heading down the hill, we're logging hours. That could be logging reps. That could be logging time under tension. In the strength world, you logging your hours is you putting in all of those sessions where you're under threshold and you're building musculature. You're building maybe the fast twitch, maybe the slow twitch. Your body's actually adapting on a neuromuscular level. to be able to handle the volume that you're going after. That second 25% is going to be ramping up. You're flirting with threshold. You're starting to lift weights that are close to like all-time PRs or, sort of where you've made it in this progression before. And then as we're heading towards the jump, this is 50 to 75% here, we are very much committing. Like, we're going to go for this. We are starting to truly like, hey, the last time that I did my 5 rep maxes, I got to whatever, 360. We're in the 350, 355, 360, 365, that sort of thing. And then the last 25% is off the jump. It's how much distance we can get flying off this jump because we have logged the hours, we've ramped up, and then we are committing to actually getting stronger, fitter, more skilled, being able to handle more volume, whichever variable we're trying to increase here. And that's when you would go for it. So this needs to be tightened up the more that you've trained the specific thing that you're doing. Like, if you're either a beginner or someone that hasn't done this specific progression, like, you can probably get away with week 1 being like moderately hard and then just getting a little bit better every single week. But if we're coming back around to back squat every year, to snatching, to cleaning, to deadlifting, to, muscle ups, strict handstand push-ups, whatever it is, we need to make sure that that runway is actually built in a way where our only goal is to be better than we've ever been before at the very end, even if that only means by handful of pounds, handful of reps, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think, and what you just said at the end there is really important. The difference between somebody who's been training for many years versus somebody who's relatively new. The longer you've been training, I would say the more important that, like, the ramp that you build yourself is, right? You are going to need to start for like higher up on the ramp, or give yourself more runway in order to log those hours. And especially if you're somebody like, think about it at the very, very highest level. I like to, when I'm explaining concepts like this, I like to think about kind of the very extremes. On the one extreme, it's the person who hasn't exercised for 30 years, right? If they come in and do 5 sets of 5 air squat on week 1 and then an empty bar back squat in week 2, like, they're effectively starting kind of at the bottom of the ramp, and they're going to be able to make progress weekly for a really long period of time. The opposite end of that is, I'm an athlete who's been training for 15 years and I just finished the CrossFit Games. I was at my peak of fitness, but in order to be able to like get back there eventually, in order to kind of launch myself off the ramp, I need to like go way, way back, get myself up high on the ramp. I need to spend a lot of time logging hours so that I can exceed where I was at before. And it's that super compensation effect where like we need to balance appropriate training with recovery in order for you to surpass what you were previously capable of. And you're right, a lot of people like, and I see this kind of at the affiliate level, it's the athlete who got a muscle up and it's like, that's awesome, congratulations, you are not now qualified to do Nasty Girls 3 rounds of 7 muscle ups, right? It's like that we haven't earned that
My
yet.
first
That would
CrossFit
be
workout.
Was it really?
Yes.
We like, it's like, okay, and I actually just had a conversation with an athlete who got her first strict handstand push-up, and I was like, okay, how do I do more of these? And I was like, well, like, it's going to be boring for a while, but like, if you just did one, like, how much rest do you need in order to go do a second, just a single? Like, we're not even worried about doing sets of 2 right now. It's like, I don't know, maybe like a minute or 2. It's like, okay, great. So every 2 minutes until you accumulate 10 strict handstand push-ups, right? It's going to take you 20 minutes to do 10 strict handstand push-ups. It's like that. I want you to do that. And then instead of like, okay, like I did that, now I'm going to try to do 5 handstand push-ups. It's like, no. You're going to go back and we're going to try to do maybe two handstand push-ups and then 1. Or we can say you're actually going to do 1 strict handstand push-up every minute and 45 seconds. So we're going to condense the amount of rest that you have, but it goes back to that principle of logging hours, logging reps, where it's like we need to kind of like build the stamina. We're not worried about how long it takes you to do this, for example, to accumulate your 20 strict handstand push-ups. Let's gradually reduce how long it takes, and then we'll start to build intensity by saying, okay, now you're going to do sets of 2 and 3. And it's the exact same thing on machines. It's the same thing squatting. It's like 5x5 back squat. Like, okay, we start at a weight that is very easy. We give your body the chance to adapt to it. We say there's a confidence element too that says like, okay, that was easy. Of course I can add 5 pounds next week. That was easy. Of course I can add 5 pounds. And if we have that, we also are building kind of like you're just enabling yourself to, again, kind of like we're starting high on the ramp and giving yourself runway to launch higher. If the first 5x5 session you do is like, fuck, I don't know if I can add 5 pounds next week. It's like, maybe you will, but like you're going to run out of weeks really quickly, and you're just not going to see the progress that you're capable, that you might have otherwise seen if you started at 185 and then added weight every week.
Yeah. So I want to start with the more obvious ones, and it's going to be really hard for me not to spend too much time on this, because if
all right,
you
I'll
say to me strength and linear progression,
I'm tracking.
Yeah. I gotta put my binder over my crotch. I was gonna say lat to make it less serious, but I got fired up again. So I want to progress to things that people wouldn't use this as much in. I think people will get a really good idea, a really solid idea of how you can improve certain things with these concepts. But the strength work one is kind of tried and true and easy to explain. So Hunter honestly just alluded to a lot of these things in what he just talked about, but let's look at it within the strength world. So if we were to do a 3x10 at, we're 3x10 back squat, another tried and true method. We're just going to add 5 pounds to each set each week. You can increase the weight, like I just said, but you can also increase the volume, right? So if I did 225 pounds for 3x10, I could do 3x11 next week. And then I could do 3x12, and then I could do 3x13, and I could do 3x14. And one could argue that there are a lot of athletes in the CrossFit space that should be adding reps instead of weights, as long as it's appropriate for the rest of their program. We can also increase volume in different ways. We can go 4x10, right? Like, how many times can I go back to the well and do that? We can also, like the person that you just described, when it came to the air squat to the 45 pounds, maybe when they reach 75 pounds, they drop their chest when they go to stand up. So it's like, all right, we're going back to 55 pounds. We're going to have 5 pounds a week. And I want to see if you can like have an exquisite squat, because that is the kind of thing that long run, it's almost like we have a macro ramp and a micro ramp. Like we're really giving ourselves momentum. Like, we get excited when someone fresh meat walks into the gym and they're not like, hey, some idiot's been teaching me to do this wrong for 10 years. Can you reverse it? That's tough, right? Yeah. We get someone new. So improving technique is also a thing that we can do. And then the thing that came to mind for me is that person can't do the 2 handstand push-ups you asked him to do. You say, all right, could we do this Monday and Thursday? Could you do that same session a second time in a week? Could we double your volume by adding a second day of frequency? Because the adaptations that are taking place within your body are not always directly related to like you just being able to improve like the tiny little thing, whether it's, strength or whether it's your midline, like that sort of thing. It's all sorts of different adaptations that are taking place, within this concept of GPP, where like sometimes we do need to just kind of up the frequency of the thing that we're working on to get ourselves a little bit more comfortable with it, in a little bit better shape. Being upside down can be challenging, that sort of thing. So that's another way that you can go ahead and do that. And this works in so many different ways. The last thing that I'll say related to traditional strength is the idea of a like progressive overload, which again, I still believe is, and this, you'll notice this, within, I think maybe the power cleans in OS2 is a place that you could notice this, but we might go 5-4, 5, 4, 3 within a particular session, or 5s, then 4s, then 3s. And then we might go start back over at 5s again, but the percentage starts 5% higher, right? So we're sort of combining these different elements of, man, if we ride this, if we just stay at triples, or if we can go to doubles to singles, then we're probably not getting the volume to improve. So when we go all the way back to the 5s, now we've got maybe 20 or 25 reps of power cleans. Awesome. We do that, but we're adding 5%, and they're probably going to feel a lot better than they did sort of in week 1. So it doesn't always have to be like I'm adding to the exact same type of session over and over. Like we can mix this up. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, I think the theme here, guys, is like we have there's a finite number of variables that we have here, right? It's like loading is one, volume is the other, technique being a little more subjective, and then like the frequency, the other component. And like I would say this works well for CrossFitters, and depending on the movement, is like you alluded to frequency. It's like, okay, well, I do 3x10 at 155 pounds today with 3 minutes of rest in between. If I do 3x10 with 2 at 155 with 2.5 minutes of rest in between, that's a linear progression in itself too, right? We're just increasing capacity. That might be a little different than like maybe that goal isn't necessarily strength development, but improvements in capacity. And that's another way that we do that. And just by like controlling and paying attention to it's really easy with the weightlifting stuff, a little bit tougher when we start to get into like nuanced conditioning. But like the important thing is like know which variable that you're manipulating and keep the others the same, right? If it's like, okay, I'm going to do 3x11 at 155, but I'm going to rest for 3.5 minutes. It's like, okay, there's a linear progression element there, but you rested for longer. So did we like, if I do my 5x5 at 315, but I have to rest 10 minutes in between my sets,
right,
versus 3 minutes in between my sets at 300 pounds, like, that's where it's like we're almost training a different thing. So the point is like pick a variable to change, but only change one of them in order for the linear progression to like truly kind of make sense.
So I have 2 accessory rules that I use. These are little tricks for me to accessory work within the strength community is so important. It's really just filling in these holes and cracks that you have, like related to a particular movement pattern or, muscle development in a particular area of your body. And 2 of the tried and true methods here, primary accessory work, you'll see all the time, Misfit Athletics, 6x10, rest 2 minutes. My rule is I cannot increase the weight on a 6x10 unless the 6th set of 10 is continuous. So if I have to pause at the top of my dumbbell bench press and wait to really kind of have that like bounce and come back up, I believe that belongs outside of an accessory category and doesn't necessarily count. So I'm going to try to essentially use linear progression and say, okay, I got 7 in a row this time. And yes, I finished all 10, but did I get 8 the next time, 9 the next time, etc.? And then I would move up. If I ever fail a 6x10, I have to rewind 2 full sessions or 2 full weeks, depending on how you want to look at it. So I failed 6x10 with 65s the other day, and I have to go back to 55s. I don't get to go to 60 because I want runway. Something is up, and it could have literally just been the day, central nervous system, whatever. But I know that if I go back to 55 and I really move them, then 60 is going to feel a little bit better, and I get another crack at 65 pounds. On the 5x15s, which would be a secondary accessory, if you fail a rep in a secondary accessory, you do not understand what it is and what you're trying to do. It does still happen, though, because you start a new movement and you just don't know what weight to use, right? 75 reps is a lot of fucking reps, even for a CrossFitter. My rule there is I have to break 20 on set 5. If I get 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, that's when I can get in, get a little bit of extra hypertrophy, like that sort of thing. So if I can get to 20 or more, then that means that I am allowed to go up. But if I just get 15, 16, 17, 18, whatever it is, I'm going to stay at that same weight, and I'm going to use any of these variables that we've talked about to try to improve on it, right? Like, are my rest periods too short? are my rest periods too long? How is my technique? Am I actually engaging, or because it's so light, am I just kind of going through the motions and seeing how little time under tension I can have? So there's a lot of variables for me to be able to use there. And again, this isn't always just because I want to be able to do 6x10 with 100-pound dumbbells. Like, it's also because it keeps me in this mentally. I'm striving for something while I'm going through it. And I know that there's just maybe a destination that I'm trying to get to, as opposed to like exactly what you said. Here we go again. I'm back around on this progression and it's 6x10 and I'll just grab the 50s and get it done and put them away.
Yeah, and it's just all that is to me is just building a foundation that you can like. It's laying a foundation that you can build upward on, right? In the example of the 5x5 air squat to a 75-pound squat, where like, okay, my chest started to drop in the 5th set. It's like, does that mean we go to 85 pounds and it's like, okay, the first 2 sets were good, but my chest dropped in sets 3, 4, and 5. It's like, but we still did it. So, and then the next week it's 95 pounds I was doing a low bar back squat for all 5 sets. It's like, we've stepped away from the idea of building a foundation and are now just like attempting to, whether it's
incredibly
short-term
thinking.
It's a very short-term mindset, right? And it's like, okay, like let's go back a little bit. And I've tried to work with our affiliate heavily on this with like, we're doing a deadlift phase right now. And it's like, are you lifting the weights to get strong, or are you lifting the weights to put a number on the board? And I think there's a huge difference for a lot of athletes where it's like, I have a number in mind that I'm trying to do, and by any means necessary is the way that I'm going to do that. And it's like a very short-term thinking. Or is it like, hey, are we going to actually focus on proper hinging mechanics so that you're using the right musculature and we're actually getting you strong, irrespective of what number goes on the whiteboard? And there's a difference between like, are you, in the strength realm, it's like, are you training to get strong or are you training for a number? And
right.
I think especially for the general population, it's like, I would argue that for everybody, except for, an athlete trying to compete actively in a competition where it's like, just get the fucking work done. The other 99.9% of the time, for 99.9% of the people, it's like, let's do this movement correctly so that we have a foundation to build upon and get better at. And also, you're like, we're talking about bulletproofing yourself, right? Every rep where that pull is like a slightly rounded back, it's like, that's one in the break the body down column, right? As opposed to the one rep where we're lifting properly, where it's like, no, you just ingrained another rep that said, this is how I do this movement correctly. This is the way that I move this weight. And now I also have kind of a runway and just potential for longer term success versus the short term, like, well, I got the right number on the whiteboard, so like I did it.
And you might sound like a bit of a knob if you did this yourself, but I use you to spread that gospel quite a bit, because people, when you're not at the whiteboard, are like, basically like, fuck this guy. How is this his score in the AMRAP or his time? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, ask him how many years he's been training 5 days a week. Just go fucking ask him, because it's longer than everybody else's answer. Like, everyone does the, like, I'm all in, fuck this, I'm all in, they throw the papers in the air, the house is on fire, this is fine. It's always that. And you have a bit more of this in the gym. Like, you can tell out there on days where you're not trying to hit that number, other people don't go to the gym, you're still out there back squatting. Sure. You can tell that you're, maybe working on your technique, or you don't have a belt on, or whatever it is. And then there are days where you're going for it. But like a lot of people don't want that answer, but it's the only one. It's like the only one that exists. You've linear progressioned getting a tiny bit fitter for a stupid period of time. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the macro level, it's just like, it doesn't necessarily need to be heavier than last time every time. And like, I'll go through phases where it's like, fuck this, like throw the papers in the air. But like, it's
you usually go back out there the next day.
Right, but it's not fuck this, I'm not going to do this for a 2-week period. It's like, fuck, all right, I'm going to go do something that I like to do, that I can do well, or I'm going to move, but I'm going to mail it in a little bit, and I know that that's acceptable because I've banked 5 days a week for, 20 consecutive years of training. And it's like, you could do that too.
Truth. All right. Let's go into the world of monostructural conditioning. This concept is where the idea, the gears matrix came from. Looking for ways to gamify and bring progression into this world where CrossFitters are getting on machines in very random patterns of like, okay, today's Metcon has 10 calories, and then it's got a 500 meter this, and then it's like, it's all over the place. It's an AMRAP, it's for time, and so much of what's happening in those workouts is based on feel. I got on the rower, I'm rowing at this pace, oops, that's a bad idea. Oh, it's kind of easy. I could probably increase the pace. You're making all of these decisions within the moment, and a lot of that is fine at an affiliate and a GPP level, but not knowing what pace you should be doing and not knowing how you could increase that over time is a huge problem in the competitive CrossFit space, especially now with how many machines get programmed. So basically what we're trying to do is we're either trying to increase your pace, your volume, or once again, your technique, if we're talking about something like running, like skiing, like rowing, that sort of thing. And honestly, sometimes the Echo bike, but that's more of kind of the sprinty thing. Like if your butt is bouncing on the seat or all of your momentum is going left to right and you're doing like a build or an aerobic session, something is fucking absolutely wrong. Like just fix that for sure. But that shouldn't be as much of an issue there. And quick overview, if you are a new listener, you don't follow the program, essentially we have 8 different speeds within this gears matrix that we want athletes to work at across run, row, ski, air bike, C2 bike, etc. And the volume and the rest periods and the duration of the windows basically force you to do so on average. If you don't have a very good athlete IQ, or you've never done any of this stuff before, it's going to take you a little while to figure it out. But luckily, all of these machines and your watch will give you an average, and that's a really great place to start. And I don't want to say that there's more of a beginner's gains thing here, but if we've got 8 gears and like 5 or 6 machines, then the opportunity to become a master at any of them, if you're not like really biasing it, is really challenging. So when you go into it, if you've put it at the right place in your day and your week, and you're asking yourself to just, knock off 0.5 seconds from your 500 or 1K split, or 10 calories per hour, or you're, just trying to increase your RPMs, your strokes per minute, like that sort of thing, that's very doable and very powerful, again, physically and mentally on the machines.
Yeah, and I think the machines provide like a unique opportunity in the sense that even like the most experienced CrossFitter or athlete, like someone, for even myself, like if I started filling in a gears matrix sheet, like I'd be able to update that basically every time I used a machine. One, because we have a whole bunch of machines at our disposal. Two, you just alluded to the fact that there are 8 different gears, right? And it's like initially, like I might get, if I go out in the gym and do a 7th gear rowing workout, right, the odds that I nail my pace perfectly that first time is basically 0, right? And I go back and I replicate that exact workout a week later, like the odds that I can shave time just through experience alone is pretty high. And then I start filling in kind of the matrix, filling in the variable, okay, I go down to 2nd gear, a little bit slower, longer duration, but slower. Again, odds that I pick the exact the maximum pace that I could have possibly held for that piece is very low. And I can just easily go back in and start like, okay, next time I do this workout, like, and with the nice thing about the machine is like it'll literally tell you what your expected finish time is. You can literally look at an average and say like, okay, I held my sixth gear. I was at a 145 pace. Like next time it's 144.8, and I can go that precise with these machines, and it's such an easy way to linearly progress. And all you have to fucking do is stare at the monitor and do your best to match that pace. And when you can't, you have an idea. It's like, okay, that's like about threshold for me there in this specific time domain on this specific machine. But there's arguably more opportunity to improve on the machine stuff than like the weightlifting stuff.
Yeah. And it's a great coaching tool, by the way. It would be so easy to make your own version of this. You don't have to follow our, exact workouts, but I like to tell athletes the majority of the year what pace to try and hold on a machine. They get fitter when you do that. There's just something about just like, hey, you're doing this at 95 pounds. That's what they're used to in so many other places. And should I brings a level of stress for an athlete. Well, what's funny is they'll often say, that seems fast. And I just get to go, look, it says right here that you did this already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that can be incredibly helpful. Whereas before, it's like, okay, do we even have a repeat workout here? You know what I mean? Like, can I really go and find something that's so close to this session that I can ask this athlete for this? And the answer is probably no. So it's very much taking these strength training principles and bringing them over to monostructural conditioning. One of my favorite places to use linear progression is in zone 2 training. I cannot just do it. I'm sorry. I'm just not that guy. I can't fucking do it. I can't just go, like, if there was no screen, like, if I had to do it on a spin bike, oh my goodness, that'd really bother me. That'd fuck my brain up. Like, maybe because I could see heart rate, I'd be okay, that kind of thing, which is not having any idea what my output would really fuck me up. So we've got a bunch of different ways that we can do this. Now, the caveat here is that machines are not the same. Running isn't even the same because the dew point changes and there could be hills and you could be hydrated and you could have fucking rolled your arches out or not. You could have flossed your ankles. A lot of variables when it comes to zone 2 and what would make your pace go up and down. But one of the ones that can be more frustrating for athletes is that they think that all Concept 2 bikes specifically, and even their other machines, are the same. Consider every single one of them entirely different. The amount of athletes that come to me and are like, well, this workout wasn't fair because, like, this bike is slow. And it's like, well, you use the same damper and RPMs will not yield the same speed on a different bike. You have to calibrate it when you start, right? So an example of that would be I want to do 120 watts at 85 RPMs. That's the kind of information that you would want going into the session, and you would move the damper to make that your reality. And you could even say, like, okay, the bike with the pee stain on it, like, this is the bike that I know I got to be on a 2, whereas the one over there I got to be on a 1. Typically, the older the bike, like, you're going through mud basically on those ones.
You can also, that's what the drag factor's for,
right?
Concept 2 machines. You can, when you dig into the drag factor, that tell you if you want consistency across at least like from rower to rower, know what your drag factor is, go into that machine, and then that's how you can match up. It's a 2 1/4 damper on this one, and it's a 2 5/8 damper on this one, and now I have the equivalent thing. But sorry, carry on.
So again, we're doing zone 2, so we're doing 45 to 90 minutes typically of keeping your heart rate between 160 beats per minute minus your age to 180 beats per minute minus your age. If you're crazy and you're taking blood sampling to do your lactate threshold, then good for you. But when we're doing it, we have, again, these different things that we can use. So if we're on a beginner gains type schedule, 5-ish watts is pretty doable. I did average 120 watts this week. I'm going to average 125 watts next week. And one of the reasons it's doable is because your heart rate's going to stay a little bit lower at the beginning. And that's going to, again, you're probably not going to ramp up into that 170 to 180 minus your age until later on in the session if you're doing it right. So that's one of the things that you can do. Obviously, volume is a huge one. So a lot of people I'll have start at 45 minutes, and then it's same wattage, but for 50, same wattage for 55, for 60, for 65, for 70. That one works really well. We can also do the exact same session a second time a week. If you're really specializing, we can do it a third time a week. But then the RPM version is one that I like to use when the athlete's gotten pretty damn good at it. So it'd be like same bike, 1 damper, 2 damper, 3 damper, whatever it is, and we're going to average 86 RPMs instead of 85. That's splitting hairs between what you're looking at in terms of an output there. And of course, you can do the same thing with wattage, but it can be frustrating to try and hold 121 watts the entire time. Good thing is the average will be displayed there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's just another example of like the number of variables that are possible to manipulate, but the idea that like to see a true linear progression, it's a science experiment, right? You don't change multiple variables at a time.
Correct.
And then are able to objectively analyze the difference between A and B, right? If you need the control, which is here's all the variables, here's what I've recorded, and then experiment B is I'm going to adjust one single variable and see what the difference yields. As soon as you start to manipulate multiple variables, you can no longer kind of connect like, well, which one caused the better or worse performance, for example. It's like you don't know, like at least not objectively. You need to rerun the test.
And we honestly should bring up it's June right now. It's not crazy hot here, but the sort of cardio loft, Austin's sad loft as we used to call it here at the gym, I started to slow down on my zone 2 up there with the heat, like the heat rises and goes up there and it gets a little stuffy. Grabbed a fan, pulled the extension cord out and was blasting myself with a fan and was able to get back
variables.
into that.
Variable added.
Well, but I'm just like I tried to get it back to that control element of like it's gonna bother me if I drop 10 watts. It shouldn't, but it does.
Sure.
That sort of thing. So you get the fan out and blast yourself with that, and now we're back to at least closer to a baseline. But again, if you're gonna do this stuff and you're gonna do a wattage test or Tour de Misfit or Mount Doom or any of these things to see if you're getting better at it, like starting somewhere, especially with zone 2, that's easy, and then working your way through it, like there's a much higher likelihood not only of you getting better, but if you just literally committing to spending that much time on a machine and actually showing up every week to do it. If you feel like you're getting a tiny bit better, the sort of product that's yielded out the other side is a little bit improved, it's increasing, like more efficacy to that type of program, I think.
For sure.
All right. This one is a bit more esoteric, a bit more in the abyss, hard to really put a finger on, but we're going to talk a little bit about it, and that's linear progression inside of metcons and intervals. Talk about fucking controlled variables.
Yeah.
That's a problem, right? So we have
That's a
test
lot.
retest. That's like the clearest one. Right, if we have a test retest at the beginning of the end,
I
of
got
phase,
issues with that too. Even
of course, yeah,
yeah.
This will be entirely imperfect, but here's what I can tell you: there are so many mini little things that you do inside of a metcon and an interval that can have linear progression brought to them if you have data. This is why we always talk about bitch work first, also known as monostructural conditioning, because the data is in your face. And if you're not looking at it, then what the fuck are you doing? Metcons and intervals kind of got to be a bit of a hardo when it comes to this. The people that have the like photographic memory of like, I went 9, 7, and 3 on that workout. And it's like, that was 6 years ago. How do you remember that? That makes no sense. So the more practical version would be writing stuff. If you use Fitter or Strivey, and you can go into your coach's notes or your athlete notes and just say, this is how I broke this up, that sort of thing. So we have data, and the cool thing is, yes, the variables and trying to control for them is damn near impossible. We also have this just endless amount of things that we could get better at inside of it. Like, I'm going to focus on transitions. Like, every time I do row into a grippy gymnastics movement, like, I take an hour before I jump up because I know it's going to be a small set.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do the small set. I'm going to get off the rower and going to go do 6 toes to bar, like, and see what happens to my overall time in splits and the amount of time I feel like I'm standing around. I've never gone unbroken on sets of 3 over the course of an entire workout with muscle ups. In a longer workout, a traditional triplet, I've never been able to hold over 1,000 cals per hour and still do my thing off of the rower. I have a bad mindset in X workout, and I'm going to shut that off. And just, there's so many things, but you have to develop data and narratives and things attached to workouts and be able to call on them to then know what you're actually trying to improve.
Yeah, I think this is where you start to go from like the objective data that's really helpful when it comes to lifting weights, right? You know exactly how much weight's on the bar. You can sets, reps, rest time, all that stuff can be very objectively controlled. Same thing on the machines. This is where you have to kind of like also have in the back of your head when you're on a machine, when you're under a barbell, like, how is this feeling right now? And if this were to be in a Metcon, like, what might this look like? And once you go into a Metcon, like, trying to translate the paces, the weights that you know that you're capable of lifting into kind of a feeling of like, okay, I'm about to jump off the cliff here, and I can't do that right now in this Metcon because I have 3 more rounds to go. And it's tough, but it's like this is where we're applying. This is like Metcons and intervals are the sport of training of your for a CrossFitter, right? We use the monostructural stuff, we use the weightlifting stuff and the more controlled areas to get you an idea of what you're capable of. And then when we go into Metcons and intervals, you have to be able to like update that, like blend the objective information that you know about what you've been capable of, and then match that up with the subjective information of how am I feeling today? How am I feeling right now in this Metcon? How am I feeling about the ability to do 8 ring muscle ups with my heart rate elevated, even though I know I've done sets of 8 in my Misfit sets, and then being able to apply it in real time. And the people who are the best at that are the people who perform the best in competition, right? Obviously, they have a tremendously high capacity, but they also have a knowledge of just how close they can push themselves to their true capacity without falling off that cliff. And this is where, like, in training, it becomes so valuable to kind of like, you can fuck it up in training, like you should, so that when you get into competition, you're able to like optimize as closely as possible your maximum potential. Whereas like the last thing you want is to be in competition and say like, I could have gone a minute faster, right? Just because you don't know, because maybe you weren't paying close enough attention in training. Whereas like, I want you to be able to say that in training, or it's like, I could have gone 25% faster, or holy fuck, I went 10% way too fast. And now I know like where that line is, so that when it comes to testing or competition, whatever that is for you, it's like, no, I extracted just about as much of my capacity as possible and put it into that workout, because I was paying attention to the weights and my split times and stuff like that. And I was also connecting that to like how my body responds after, you know, a set of 10 thrusters versus a set of 18 thrusters. And this is where that matching up the objective data in training with kind of the subjective feeling is really, really important, because, you know, you don't have a machine to tell you your wattage during bar facing burpees or stuff like that. You have to go by feel in a lot of those movements.
So it's It's almost like there's too many things to reference related to this, but paying really fucking close attention to how certain things are going and making notes on it and then adapting moving forward is the kind of thing that will, separate you from like novice to intermediate to, to pro, that sort of thing. When it comes to skill movements, we've actually already covered a lot of this, talking about gymnastics strength work, which would be, your EMOMs where you're adding, sort of reps and volume and frequency and all of that. So basically just everything that we've talked about, insert muscle up, handstand walk distance, chest to bar pull-ups, bar muscle ups, all these different things, and working on them, in an environment where you're doing something that's very doable, and then you're adding again all of the things that we talked about. But when it comes to actual skill work, the idea that we talked about related to golf coaches makes much more sense.
Sure.
We have to know what the component parts are that creates the movement, whether it be gymnastics or whether it be, a high skill barbell movement or any of the weird shit that gets thrown a CrossFitter's way that requires a level of skill. We have to, before we even begin linear progression, identify those component parts, and hopefully you have someone that can do that for you. Or you're just, kind of a nerd, that sort of thing related to CrossFit. And then you are progressing based on checking like more boxes than you did before. And that could be because you went from kip swings on the rings to then a kip swing into creating your hip pocket, or it could be the entire muscle up and this part looked good, this part looked good, this part didn't, and now all three components kind of come together. But again, you need to understand the positions that you're trying to get into, and this is where filming becomes incredibly important. That sort of becomes your metric, right? Like, to the naked eye, does this portion of the movement look the way that it's supposed to? And using video review and coaches and that sort of thing to help you progress through it, that's how you can use linear progression to get better at a skill. But if you don't understand the pieces of it that you're trying to get better at, it's probably more gymnastics strength work or, unfortunately, 3 steps back to take no steps forward, which we see a lot within skill work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is where the difference between like a good coach and an excellent coach can be distinguished, where like I always try to think of like when I'm watching an athlete move, this applies to like all movements, not just gymnastics, but gymnastics is a really good one because of the multitude of kind of coordinating parts, is to try to think about this in terms of first principles. And it's like, what is the root cause of the issue that I'm seeing? It's like, okay, we catch a snatch, or we'll stick with the gymnastics work. It's like, I really struggle with handstand push-ups, and we look at the handstand push-ups, and the athletes, as they're pressing, their rib cage is flaring upward a little bit. They're not able to bring their head through, and their arms at the top, and their lockout's a little soft. And like the novice or the good coach says, it's like, okay, I need you to control your rib cage a little bit more. I need you to really press through into that lockout position. And I'm saying, like, I can tell that person to do this as much as they want. Your problem is your mobility. Like, this has nothing, like, we're not going to see, I might be able to yell at you to keep your rib cage down and lock your elbows out, and we'll see a little bit of progress there, but nothing is going to move the needle as much as, like, I need you to
that goes back to do the thing. And it's like, but how?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, like, I know what I need to be doing. I just don't know how to get to it. And it's like, well, the golf swing, it's like, well, my follow-through sucks. It's like, well, your follow-through sucks because the way that you took the club away from the start was actually setting you up for there's no chance that you can get into the right position, the correct end position, because you didn't start in the correct position. If you're upside down, it's like you can't achieve lockout. We can't bring the head through. It can't control the rib cage. Sure, there might be like there might be a body awareness thing, but more likely it's actually just the root cause is that your body is glued together in such a way that is not like no amount of me telling you to pull your rib cage down or straighten your elbows is going to change the fact that you're lacking internal rotation in your shoulders and your scaps are glued together and don't rotate at all. And like that, we need to go down to the root cause. The same thing with like it's like, hey, when I back squat, I never feel it in my glutes and my hamstrings, or like when I deadlift, my back hurts, and it's like, but I have a 400-pound deadlift. It's like, no, you've just learned to compensate around these things. The first principle here is that your midline is actually weak because you've learned again.
That's a Jefferson curl. That's not a deadlift.
Yeah, exactly.
Pick it up.
Yeah, it's like, so why then, like, okay, hold a plank. It's like, you can't hold a plank for 60 seconds. Like, the root cause is like you've chased the number, not getting strong. And like we see that so often with athletes where it's like the root cause of your problem.
Give them a quick 21-15-9 and you'll find out how good they are at deadlifting.
Yeah, it's like this is very simple, and it's the problem is like sometimes it's so simple that athletes it requires like a simple solution of like you need to lay on a lacrosse ball for 5 minutes a day for the next 3 weeks to get your shoulders moving correctly, and then we need to relearn this movement because you were just learning a movement with a certain limitation that you had, and now we need to like rewire your brain and your body to move correctly. And I think a lot of people like, and I would say even like CrossFit to a certain extent, and there's a reason for that because it's like this is a program for the average everyday person. I'm going to have a hard time with adherence telling somebody that instead of this 1 hour CrossFit class, I need you to use a lacrosse ball for 45 minutes. Like, we're going to do the best we can with what we have. But if you're really pursuing that kind of virtuosity and long-term improvement, it's like we need to think in kind of a first principles mindset of what is the root cause of the problem, not let's fix the individual components of the problem and then the whole system will work. It's like, no, we need to retool the system, and then the component parts are going to start to work together as a unit, and then we're going to see progress there. So, and gymnastics work is such an easy. That's the best place I can. It's like,
yeah.
Again, I know why your elbows are bent when you swing forward on a bar muscle up. It's like it's not because you like just somebody didn't tell you to straighten your elbows. It's like you're lacking rotation in your shoulders, and it's like when you
really,
walk
as
around,
a coach, just want to say, please don't.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like again, I know this is the root cause of your problem. There isn't a cue to correct this per se. Like, I can give you the cue and it might look better, but this is the short-term fix. Here's the long-term fix. And it's just that's a higher barrier to entry for a lot of people. Is like, what do you mean this is going to take weeks of mobility work to improve my handstand push-ups? Like, I just want that EMOM.
Yeah, this last one here is equal parts like tell me you're a meathead without telling me you're a meathead. We're going to apply linear progression to mobility. But then the concept of making adaptations between the ears versus physically. I am classically the kind of person where I would rather pay to go see a physical therapist 3 times a week and do the movements there with them in front of them than get that stupid piece of paper with the exercises written down on it. It's like, I coach professional athletes. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm here for you to make me do it. Like, in my world, like, the programming's free, the coaching is not, kind of a thing, right?
Right.
So when it comes to mobility, I have to, if I'm personally going to make a change in my mobility routine, I have to start somewhere that isn't like the Mount Everest of mobility routines. It's, all right, dude, you haven't been doing your couch stretch and your back's tight. Shocker, right? So like, I'm going to go out into the gym and maybe I'm just going to go out there 5 minutes before class starts and I'm going to couch stretch. My checkbox is that both legs go on the wall. Maybe it's 10 seconds. Maybe it's 30 seconds. Maybe it's as long as it should be, 2-3 minutes per side per day, that kind of thing. And then I build from there. And again, like the linear progression becomes very apparent and very clear because range of motion in a lot of these things, or how comfortable you feel inside of that range of motion changes, becomes less excruciating, that sort of thing to get through. So we have range of motion, we have duration, and we have frequency. And those are things that we can increase. And two of my favorite books, I know everyone under the sun now has read Atomic Habits, but Tiny Habits is another really good one to listen to just remind yourself of the idea of starting in a place with runway. And runway isn't always, hey, I can only do 155 for 10, so I should start at 95 so that I can pass 155. It's also, I need to start somewhere that's actually fucking doable, right? Not doing a 800 calorie deficit instead of just 100 or 200 to start, like that kind of thing. These places where we overcorrect and we go all in on something and then we get super burnt out. I like to find a way to bring the meathead mentality into those worlds. And when it comes to mobility, it's just doing it at all is my first barrier to entry. Like, because if I go out there with my list and I'm going to do mobility for 45 minutes, day one, nah. It's not sustainable for me. But I probably could build to a place where, I got back into, doing my pliability sessions and doing all those things. But I need to progress to get to that point, to make it a habit, to feel like it's worth it, to feel like, oh, damn, like I got out of the car today and I could stand all the way up. My back wasn't tight. Maybe I should continue to do this, that sort of thing. So the mobility world, it just feels like it's kind of hard to make progress and to overcome the this is just the way my shoulders are, my hips are, my glutes are, that sort of thing. But if you can find ways to crack the door open and kind of get in and start to get to work, you're much more likely to see a few of the benefits and then actually stick with it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, this is the drum that I'll beat, especially for the average everyday person. It's like, if you can't get into positions, you are just going to work your way into reinforcing poor ones, right? It's like, I don't want you to be 80 years old and your back squat to be like a 4-inch deep squat with 200 pounds on your back, right? That's not a squat. If we've gone from squatting we kind of squat too parallel because my hips have always been tight, and then as I get older, it's a little bit higher, it's like, that's not the linear progression that I'm after. It's like, let's find access to the full range of motion that you have, in the same way that we want to push our capacity as far to the right as you possibly can towards elite level fitness. I also need and want your body to be able to access the ranges of motion that you were, ideally born with, right? Everybody sees the toddler who's just learning how to squat or just learning how to walk, and then they go down to pick something up off the ground, and it's this flawless upright squat. And
dude, my son chews on his foot when I'm reading books to him, and I'm like, you're just like, bitch.
Never lose it, dude. Never lose it. And it's
my dad told me to bite my toe every day of my life. He told me that when I was a kid. He was like, just bite your toe once a day and you will stay flexible your entire life. And every once in a while now he'll be like, can you bite your toe? And I'm like,
did you ask him? Can Claire bite his toe?
Oh my God,
Lord.
Dude, you can't even see his toes. I know where his toes are.
Damn it. But yeah, the mobility thing, it's like you will, my opinion, you will never be able to express your true physical potential and capacity if you don't have full access to the ranges of motion that your body should be in. And I'm not talking about doing the fucking splits. I'm talking about being able to sit reasonably comfortably in an ass to grass squat,
deadlift,
right?
Push up.
Exactly. Can you put your arms directly over your head, or do you need to flare your rib cage and lean back in order to straighten your arms overhead? It's the difference between those two things that if we can find access to that range of motion and then build strength and capacity through it, that is in the same way that it's really hard to gain that, it's really hard to lose that. You're way better off training in those ranges of motion early on, and you're going to be able to like retain those as you get older. I think for me, that's like, I would consider myself relatively uninjured. I have my occasional nags and pains and tweaks and stuff like that, but for the most part, because I try to, like, I prioritize good range of motion, like I'm a little bit more durable, I think, than like my counterparts who maybe don't prioritize that as much. And it's just like, it's like, train through the ranges of motion that your body was meant to. Like, you build strength, you build tendons, ligaments, all that sort of stuff through those ranges of motion. And it's like, then when you get pulled or yanked into a slightly compromised position, like, the odds you get injured are way fucking lower. Or when you do, you recover a hell of a lot faster, and you're still able to get back into those ranges of motion, instead of like, well, now I've lost an inch of depth in my squat because I didn't correct this when I needed to.
Yeah, I mean, this might be one of the rare occasions where you're playing good cop here by saying that you might not be able to reach your potential. Like, I'll go one further and say that you might literally be hurting yourself while you're lifting, and in turn becoming
100%.
weaker by lifting.
Sure.
Right? Like, we have connective tissue, we have this like mesh that holds, everything around our spine in place. And that's the thing that goes before we start to herniate discs and rupture discs. So, like, okay, I can see on the whiteboard that I'm like, oh, wow, I went from 400 to 420 to 440 to I got to cancel my gym membership.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, for
like
sure.
Not being able to do stuff like that, like, could send you in the opposite direction of where you're trying to go.
Yeah, I threatened my 5 p.m. class a couple weeks ago because it was that deadlift day, and it was like the number of like slightly to moderately suboptimal hinges. The
not
knee
like
initiated.
CrossFit fail videos, but not up to our standard.
but certainly not like what I want to see you lifting
Right.
if you want to be able to lift 30 years from now, right? And it's like every single my opinion, and maybe this is too far in one direction, because like if you have kind of that perfectionist mindset, I don't think that's necessarily useful either. But I'm gonna push that a little bit toward people, and it's like
overqueuing works.
For sure. It's like, hey, every rep that you do where you choose to allow your back to round as a result of the fact that maybe your hamstrings are tight, or maybe they're just not strong because you've never learned how to load them properly. Every rounded back deadlift you do is one rep in the column of I'm a little closer to getting injured, versus one really good rep that goes in the column of I'm building durability, strength, and capacity in a safe range of motion. And it's like, you pick which bucket that rep goes into. Like, I'm going to strongly recommend you choose the latter bucket, right? And that means take some weight off, learn how to do the movement properly, or, hey, let's stop like trying to work around this very obvious mobility deficiency or whatever it is. And like, what are you here for? Like, are you here to just like put up a number on the whiteboard that's going to get erased in 2 days? Or are you here for like long-term strength and stability and fitness and like, quality of life? Because like in a lot of ways, like over a long enough time span, those two things do not necessarily line up. And like, CrossFit's got its threshold training where it's like, if it's perfect, like maybe we go faster or go heavier. And if it's sloppy, obviously that's no bueno. But man, when it comes to like, there are certain movements, certain loadings where I'm like, there's no compromise on this. It's either do it perfectly or like piss off. Like I don't want to see this, mostly because I don't want to see you get injured, because again, you're putting too many reps in the bucket of like, I'll probably be fine. But you're also teaching your body that the only way that it moves is incorrectly. And to me, it's like, how could like, it blows for me. I'm like, there's no question. Like, why would I ever make that trade? I'm not going to continue to swing have a heinous golf swing and like assume that it'll kind of iron itself out and that I'll be good one day. It's like, no, like I'd rather learn how to do this thing correctly, take the slow kind of baby step approach initially, but like once you've ingrained the correct movement pattern and that's just like your default setting, it's like the sky becomes the limit.
Yep. I think we can count that as final thoughts. My answer to your question, or maybe it was a question or maybe it was a statement.
It was a question.
We've talked about this before. There's a monkey back here that there is literally a primitive
400,000-year-old monkey.
Yeah. And there's a human in the front. And, man, we get out into that gym. There's, I almost
monkey's
just say
got
the
the
opposite
symbols
sex.
now.
There's there's a sex that you're interested in out there. There's status. The amount of evolutionary things that are taking place in a group setting where you're doing physical work. Woo! That monkey is out there. So that's why someone would make the short-term decision, and then other people, the monkey's just running the show. But you get the boys talking about coaching prowess, a little puck, and a little linear progression, and you have a 1 hour and 36-minute episode.
All right, hold on. I got one final thought after you're done. The final thought is in the third period, at the 10-minute and 29-minute mark, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 penalties called cross-checking, roughing, fighting, misconduct. That's what happened last night.
The narrative is that they won't leave you alone even if they're beating your ass, and that is proof that that's the case. The game, they are setting up further games by doing that shit, by playing that way. See how much we can piss you off, make you mad at us, get you over emotional. Oh my God.
Why am I penalty minutes? I can't, where did that happen?
I got to stop being so nice talking about the Florida Panthers, but I am kind of fascinated, to be honest. That's a fucking bunch. Is Marshy in there?
Oilers in the penalty box.
Is there?
No. Yeah, a lot of Oilers in the penalty box. Yeah, 85 Oiler penalty minutes to 55 Florida penalty minutes.
That sounds like they were in their monkey mind a little bit too much.
Yeah, they
not
were.
using the old prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, well, at that point we were down. We were down 4-1. So
hopefully no suspensions though. Anything major?
I mean, it says misconduct, but Sam Bennett misconduct.
That's shocking.
Yeah, I don't know about
fucking shocker.
Yeah, I don't know about major. A couple of misconducts at the very end of the game too. That third period must have been a hoot.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna go watch the highlights right now. All right, do we do it?
Done.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Head to our link in bio on social media to get signed up for any of our programs on Strivey or Fitter. Head to teammisfit.com, click on the sign up now button, and you will get a 2-week free trial to our affiliate programming, Push Press, StreamFit, SugarWad, SharpenTheAxeCo.com for new tees and new hoodies. See you next week.
Later.
You're a scrappy little misfit, just like me.
Biggest bunch of misfits I ever set eyes on.